Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Teacher Tuesday with Mahalia Baldini. Today is Teacher Tuesday AEL by the numbers. Mahalia Baldini. I am Krista Mosier, your host, and Anne-Marie Molinari Sanders is the co-host. And at this point, I'm going to stop sharing and introduce Mahalia Baldini, our AEL State Director. Mahalia, you have it.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who regularly attend our statewide biweekly calls, the things I'm going to be talking about today are probably not going to be really new to you, but it's going to be very informative for the rest of you that may not get those sort of regular updates disseminated down. So we're going to talk about quite a few things today related to some current events and some latest news that we have in regards to adult education here in Texas. So on the agenda, just so you know what is in store for you, and this is your opportunity to leave the meeting if you want to, now that you know what's actually on the agenda and I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to talk a little bit about last year's performance. I think it's always important to take a look back, put a bookend on the work that we did while we're continuing to move forward and improve our performance year over year and the work that we're doing with our students. So I want to share with you our program year 22-23 performance. We're going to talk a little bit about the scholars of the year. This is something that we look forward to every year for the past 2 years and implemented back in 2022. So we'll talk a little bit about our scholars and recognize those. We have a couple of announcements from the Office of Career and Technical Adult Education. This is our federal partner under the U.S. Department of Education, and it's who we report to for all of our grant funds and works. They made a couple of announcements. I want to share that with as many people as I can as we continue to be responsive to those announcements. And then last, we'll close out with a look at the legislative session. I want to talk about 2 specific bills that came through earlier in the session that are really related to the work that we're doing here in Texas. Okay, the first number, I entitled this AEL by the numbers because I knew that it was going to have probably a bunch of numbers in it. That's just the way these things tend to go. So our first number, I want to talk about some state performance. So one thing to keep in mind is when we think about Texas's performance, we are talking about Texas in relation to all the other states basically in our nation. So the numbers that you're looking at here are the targets that we have with the U.S. Department of Education. Specifically, the administration of our grant funds comes from, we call them OCTAE, but that is an acronym for the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education. And every 2 years, we negotiate targets with our federal partners in relation to a couple of things. So take a look through here. One thing you will notice that we don't have on here, we have never had enrollment targets. So we've never had enrollment targets with our federal entity. We do have them as a state level target, which means you guys have enrollment targets that we're hoping to meet. That's to ensure that we're just being a good steward of our funds and we're serving as many people every single year as we possibly can. But we do have these other targets. For all of the targets that you see in front of you, they're kind of an underlying theme, and that really is outcomes for our students. All of the targets that we have with our federal partners really have to do with what is the work and what is the body of work that we're doing with our students. And ultimately, what do those outcomes look like in relation to work, in relation to achieving credentials, to exiting our program and going into post-secondary education to continue their career pathway. So what you'll notice here is that all of these performance measures are related to that. We usually take these and then we pass those down to our local grantees. So many of you may be aware that these are some performance measures that you have. Some of you may not be aware, but this is how we sort of fared for our reporting period for last year. Now, what you'll notice on each of these is that there is a cohort period that says from like July 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 2021. And the reason for that is because there is such a delay in being able to access and have the information available for us to actually report it. So much of the employment, the median earnings, other things related to employment, those are very delayed in terms of when the employers report that information to the states, and therefore the states kind of have a delay in when we can actually report it up the chain to our federal partners. So when we're setting these targets, we are setting them for the actual current program year, but the understanding is that the reporting period in terms of the folks that are actually going to sit within the numerators and denominators in each of these measures are from a previous time. So when you look at the target for the employment rate Q2 and you see that it's only 34.20%, realization is that, well, we were in the middle of a pandemic during the reporting period for that time. So the fact that we as a state were at 40.75, so we were above and exceeding our performance target for that particular measure. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but I did want to kind of share. At the federal level, we are considered meeting performance if we are 95% of target. We also have that measure here at the state level for all of our programs as well. So for some of these where we were really, really close, like that credential rate, for instance, the target was 34.10%. And we were at 33.98%. Even though we're not there, we are within that 95% of target variance. So we actually did meet the measure. So a lot of this is just a direct response and directly correlated to all the work that you guys are doing. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing out there. And we will continue to improve and continue to see, I think, some of these targets start to creep up as we are going into a reporting period that is outside of what has been deemed the pandemic. And we're going into this post-pandemic world. So we'll keep you guys posted. We have our next negotiation for the next 2 years with the U.S. Department of Ed on all the targets related to these measures. So we will see what the future holds for us. The next thing is, I hope all of you are aware of this. Some of you may not be. It's hard to get information disseminated quickly in a state that's as big as ours. And we have about 100 providers across the state. So sometimes it's just very hard to get information all the way disseminated down to all the little tentacles that we have. But since I've been the state director, I have petitioned the governor's office for a proclamation for Adult Education and Family Literacy Week. Hopefully this is something you guys are celebrating. It's something that is recognized at the national level. I like to ask our governor to also recognize it here specifically in the state. And he has done that for the last 2 years. And this is something that I'm going to continue to request. One of the reasons behind requesting it, and I really want to build a statewide recognition of the work that you guys are doing. This program to me is just ground critical for all the need that we have here in Texas. We have a ton of second language learners, a ton of folks that are coming here that are highly skilled, highly trained in their home countries. They're coming here, they're looking for opportunities. We have a lot of folks that are trying to get into college and maybe aren't quite there in their academic readiness that we're preparing. We have a ton of folks that we're helping to get high school equivalencies. The work is never ending, and it's deep and important work. And so I want to continue to make sure that we're getting as much recognition out there of the program itself and all of the things that we do for Texans. Okay. Back in 2021, we petitioned our commissioners here at the Texas Workforce Commission, and we asked them if we could develop a special recognition and a special award for what we call the Scholars of the Year. And the Scholars of the Year are folks that are nominated by local programs. Local programs will send in a nomination form. They'll tell us about, hey, we've got this really great student. Here's all the things you need to know about them. And it's not just strictly based off of their academic performance, but really it has more to do with their persistence, their dedication, as well as the mentorship and civic engagement that they have both inside and outside the classroom. So the programs nominate these individuals, and then we like to take the time to recognize them not once, but twice in terms of big way. And the first one is at our Fall Institute, which occurs in September. During Adult Education and Family Literacy Week, we also held our Fall Institute here in Austin. So we were able to get all of our scholars here in Austin. We literally rolled out a red carpet for them. And recognize them in a big way. And then we will recognize them again at our annual workforce conference in November. And that is a conference that we have about 3,500 people. It's our workforce boards, all their contractors, our vocational rehabilitation folks, as well as many of you in adult ed. So it's a very large conference and a platform to recognize and celebrate our scholars one more time. Outside of that, if you are not currently following the Texas Workforce Commission on all your social media, I encourage you to do so. You will see all of these scholars creep up throughout the year as we'll be utilizing them on social media. So the Texas Workforce Commission, I work with the communications team here along with several of my staff to make sure that we can continue to recognize our scholars and our program and through our social media platforms. Now, I'm going to attempt to play a video.
Ryan Osborne is a shining example of resilience and determination. Despite facing profound life challenges like addiction, homelessness, and incarceration, he has completely transformed his life, emerging as a model citizen.
Once I finally got out of that, then I started working at Goodwill, and all the programs they offer.
Ryan's achievements reached a pinnacle when he was inducted into the National Adult Education Honor Society, a living testament to the possibilities achievable through commitment and perseverance. Rosa Canales' radiance shines through her determination, progress, and dedication to her family and community.
I am from Mexico. When I arrived to this country, the first thing that I knew was that if I wanted to make progress, I had to learn English.
She handles multiple responsibilities with organization and patience, always eager to learn and improve. She is a scholar admired by other adults and a source of inspiration for all. Despite a high-level education, Ruben worked as a handyman due to unrecognized foreign diplomas until he found a program to validate his degree. Initially struggling with English skills, he improved through group activities and educational platforms.
Eventually, a friend of mine told me about YCLC. I enrolled the program and I was sent to be evaluated several times in my English skills. We learned of being persistent, hear on the story of overcoming, encourage us to keep going in our personal goals.
Ruben Frausto's journey is a beacon of hope, proving that with perseverance, obstacles can be overcome. His story inspires us all to pursue our dreams. Zara al-Rakabi Rashid's journey is an inspiring tale of resilience and determination. She was uprooted to Iraq at the age of 10, facing an entirely different world. At 18, she returned to the United States, eager to complete high school. But unable to do so due to her age and missed years, she pursued a GED.
Irving's adult education program changed me in many ways. It made me a more confident individual with more knowledge on her education career. It also made me gain long-lasting friendships.
Maricruz Lopez's incredible journey is a testament to her determination and commitment to education. She enrolled in a GED program at the Wilkinson Center. Her journey is a powerful source of inspiration for all.
My advice is, do not stop. You can continue. And there are different opportunities for help.
Melanie Manjude is a shining example of resilience and dedication. As a natural-born leader, Melanie dedicates her time to volunteering, translating, and guiding fellow students. Recently, she was inducted into the National Adult Education Honor Society.
When I was young, I studied music. I learned to play piano, violin, and oboe. So the music taught me the determination and the discipline are the key to all success.
We, at our workforce annual conference, will be playing this video and introducing all of our scholars to everyone else, basically. So we want to make sure that we're not in our little world when it comes to adult education, and that we're really sharing the work that we do and our scholars and with all of our partners within our workforce system. So thank you guys for indulging me. Okay. Moving on to our number 3. This is probably going to take up the bulk of our conversation today, but it's really good news. It's just in time news. And so I like to get that down and disseminate it as far as I can when we're really talking about things that are happening at the federal level that may have an impact to us at the state level, whether that's a positive impact or a potentially challenging impact. It's always good to kind of know what's coming. So 2 things I'm going to touch on today are some potential data collection and performance accountability changes. I'm going to walk you through some of those that I feel like probably have the bigger impact for us. And then we also have some new or revised NRS approved tests that we're also trying to prepare for at the state level. And I'm sure you guys are already talking about it at the local level. So a little background before we get started. For the past several years, the Texas Workforce Commission has commented on several key issues that we felt were kind of restrictive to local states and local programs in terms of just performance accountability, how we're measuring. And we really felt early on that some of the measures that we currently have don't tell the story of student success. And some of those just because they're way too restrictive. So if you look at our measurable skills gains right now, some of them are just way too restrictive. They're not broad enough. They don't allow us to really tell the full story of the student. We have also made comments about, well, in statute language, there are 3 things that make you eligible for our funding and for our programs. One is basic skills deficient. The other is you lack a high school diploma or an equivalent. And the third is if you are a second language learner. With those 3 eligibility criteria, we have felt for a long time that why do we need to give an actual NRS approved test as sort of this prequel for enrolling in our program if the individual is coming to us and they lack a high school diploma, for instance. We already know that they're eligible and that probably their goal is going to be to obtain one. And so we've been making comments, and you can kind of read through the rest of these. We've been making comments for several years to the U.S. Department of Education to try to get them to more align the performance accountability and what our expectations are, what we owe to the feds, as well as what we push down to you guys in terms of performance expectations, measures, and targets. And so we have an opportunity through something called an information collection request that we can respond to at the federal level. So this would be probably the equivalent of us putting out proposed rules or something like that that would allow the public to really make comments about what the U.S. Department of Education is proposing. Some of the other things that we've always said is we didn't understand the restrictions of not having a high school equivalency test, individual content area test count as a measurable skills gain. Right now, they have to get the whole credential, so it doesn't count. We never really understood that. So these are ongoing conversations that we've been having since 2014, and every time they put out this information collection request, we like to get in there and provide the state's feedback and what we really think about some of the things that they're putting out there and they're asking. Coming out for this particular information collection request, which we refer to as ICRs, the big news is that at least Octave have announced that they will be evaluating the technical feasibility of recognizing incremental growth within an educational functioning level as a measurable skills gain. So all of you know that when you are giving pre and post testing students, that student has to make at least a full level gain in order to count. And there's lots of variance in between. If a student falls at the higher end of that level, it's easier for them to move up to the next level. Whereas a student in the lower scoring end, it takes a lot more. So it's really not equitable even within the levels. And so Octave is recognizing this, I think, which is a good step in the right direction. And they're going to be evaluating the technical feasibility of us saying, okay, students who actually fall at the lower end of a level, they can make incremental growth within that level. And that is still something to celebrate. That is an outcome. They are learning. They have improved in that skill set. And so I'll keep you guys posted as this continues. These things take years typically to do these type of evaluations. So I wouldn't expect anything to happen soon, but it's good news that at least they are being responsive and willing to listen to some of the things that we have been bringing forward for many, many years now. If you want to take a look at the information collection request in its totality, you can go to the OMB control number. I put it on here. You can look that up in the Federal Register, pull it up, and then you'll be able to see all of the documents that they put out for comment, as well as all the actual comments that were made, including the one that Texas has submitted. Okay. In regards to some of the potential reporting changes, again, these are things that if they say, well, states now have to report X, Y, and Z, or states no longer have to report X, Y, and Z. These tend to be things that we pass down to the local level through our grants and through our contract language. So here are some just potential reporting changes. Again, if you go to the Federal Register, you'll be able to see all of the things related to this information collection request if you want to kind of read through it in more detail. But in terms of what that really means here, local impact or the state impact, there's a recognition in there about gender, adding a couple of different items in terms of the selections that students can make. One is to include non-binary. The other one is to include no answer. So if we're doing an enrollment form, we're having an orientation with a student, they can choose not to answer when it comes to gender. Another one is no longer report students by educational functioning level if their goals are more aligned to certain activities like transition to post-secondary education, high school equivalency, attainment, workplace literacy, or IET. So instead of a student coming into the program, what do we always immediately do? We give them a test. The reason why we do that is because we have to report every student in our system in a level. On the current reporting specs and how the state has to report those students is we are required to place them into a level for the purposes of reporting them. Octave is now looking at and realizing, I think, after many years of us telling them and kind of providing feedback to them that, hey, not all students need to come in and be put into a level because it just doesn't align. They don't all need pre and post testing. We have lots of students that come in. They're there to obtain their high school equivalency, and it would be better suited for them to take a GED practice test, for instance, for us to know where they are on their academic journey, as opposed to a tape or a CASAS. So there are some potential changes related to that, perhaps. What we said is we would love to have an option to report students that are not going to be falling into this pre-post test way, to be able to report them at another level. Just give us another line and we can put folks in there, right? So we don't have to unduly burden the student with testing if that's really not what they're there for. And that us as educators have other means to do formative testing for students to know if they're making gains as such, but these are really coming up with more goal-oriented measurable skills gains for our students. One of the other big things that they had on the information collection request had to do with feedback on trying to redefine distance education and distance learning. So right now in federal guidance, and really it's only in guidance, it's not in statute, and the regs are pretty broad, but right now students who are earning more than 50% of their total contact hours through proxy hours or through an approved distance learning curriculum, we report those individuals as distance learners, true distance learners. The feds are really asking us to, with all of this new technology, education tech, software that's out there, applications that are helping to support students virtually. We have satellite programs, we've got flex classes, we got hybrid classes, we got blended learning. We have all these new different learning and teaching strategies. How can we redefine distance education to be more inclusive of what's actually happening in the classroom? And so right now they're just really asking for feedback. Now I will tell you, just in working with other states and seeing how other states are already started to define this during the pandemic when it became a necessity. Here in Texas, we're kind of lucky. We've had distance education out for a long time. We've got solid policies on it. Some other states, they didn't even have it as an option at all. So everybody's trying to define this for what works best for them. And in response to that, Octane is also trying to build some boundaries around what it is and what it isn't. What's the difference between distance education and a remote class that's happening synchronously with a live instructor, but in a virtual modality? So those are all conversations that will be ongoing probably for the next year, couple of years before they'll come back and give us some new boundaries on how we will report distance education and distance learning in the future. Now, in terms of reporting it, that is one thing. In terms of how the states will have to update their distance education plan, that is really where the work with you guys comes into play. So we will keep things rolling the way that we have here in Texas and utilizing it in all the different ways and fashions that you guys have been until we hear different. And then if Octane ends up changing the definition somewhere down the line, we'll let you know, and we'll probably do some training and some webinars on that particular topic. Likely none of this would even think about being implemented until 2025, maybe even 2026. Just like the state can be a little slow sometimes, the feds just go one notch. And so the feds are even slower sometimes. So it just takes a lot of time for them to go back and really look at all this information in a thoughtful way, look at validity studies, and really evaluate what they want to do in terms of adoption for some of the comments that we've made. So I don't anticipate that this is anything that's going to happen soon. It's a lot of information. I had to warn you guys at the top. It's going to be a lot of pushing information out. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some NRS approved tests. You guys should have access to the PowerPoint. There was a Federal Register announcement in regards to some new NRS approved tests. So we have 3 new ABE related tests. We have 4 new ESL normed tests, and it also provided some information on the ESL tests that are going to be expiring. Basically, from the Texas point of view, this is what we are looking at doing right now. So for all of the new test forms and everything that's going on, we are currently in the process of updating our system. There's 2 things that the state has to do when new tests are released. The first is that we have to update our policy. And we have to decide that even though there may be new tests on the market, we have to sit down as a state and we have to decide what are the tests that the NRS has approved that we want to approve here in Texas. And the states have the flexibility to decide what those tests are. So that's the first step, is us sitting down, looking through everything, working with the test publishers, going through all the information, getting our questions answered from the state level. Then we make a decision about what tests we want to be allowable here in Texas. Once we've done that, we can work towards systems enhancements. So all of the tests that you guys are giving, obviously they have to go into our data system. That's how we manage everything. So that's a pretty big undertaking for us to have to update all of our systems in order to accept these new tests, whether that's because we've got new forms, we've got new levels, we've got new cut scores in terms of determining those educational functioning levels. There's all kinds of stuff that kind of goes into that. We are currently in the process of doing both of those things, looking at it from a policy perspective, as well as looking at the systems enhancements that need to occur. Right now, tentatively, we are trying to have both of those things accomplished before March of 2024, so that we can have new tests in the system so that we can kick the tires on it. We can test it, we can pilot it before it becomes actually official July 1st of 2024, because all the current existing tests will be getting sunset, and so we'll have to transition to these new tests. So all of that for the purposes of performance transition and start July 1st. But we are moving towards this March 2024 date. We want to be able to get the test out there early, just so we can work with them. You can test students on it. You can start to see how things are going to vary. Those of you that have been in adult ed for a while, you understand that when we get new tests, sometimes when you test students, they start to move. Well, they were level 3 on the last set of tests, and now they're a level 2, or maybe they're a level 4. But there's usually some shifting in terms of where those placements happen. So we want to get out as much time and give ourselves as much runway as we can, just to be able to be responsive to these new test options that we have. Okay.
There was a question. Can you reach out to all outstanding former students in the program who have received their HSEC?
Can we? Why would we? I guess my response, whoever asked that question, can you give me a little bit more context?
You have a lot of stories and you shared some of them, but it would be nice to have some from every place, like that video that you showed us. And if a lot of people are doing it and they're exceeding their expectations, and some of them, they have the robes and everything. Some of them don't ever get that. They don't ever show their families that. And I just wondered if your program will be able to do something like that for all of the students.
That's a great idea. Maybe that's something we can think about, putting the power into the students' hands to be able to report their stories to us. That may be something we're working too on, revamping our website. And maybe that's an opportunity that we can put something on there to collect information from folks who have benefited from the program. Because right now, through the nomination process, it's kind of all back on the programs to nominate people. And sometimes I can't imagine from a local process standpoint how difficult that would be. So we limit it to 2 people per grant that they can nominate. And that's just because we probably have hundreds, if not thousands. We serve 70,000 students across Texas every year. But that may be an idea that we could do on our new website to help us to collect information and then turn around and utilize those students in some way, make the program known and get it out there. So thanks for the suggestion.
Mary Springer says we do videos for STAR students locally to highlight them.
Cool. That's wonderful. Yeah, I like that idea. Another thing, just in terms of the website, this is still like in development too, but I'd like a way for people to directly have a link to the programs. So if they fall on our website, we field hundreds of calls and mostly emails that come in, because on our website, we have an email that sends them basically to the state staff. What they really want are local services. Most of the time it's, hey, I need my GED and I live in Fort Stockton. Where can I go? Those are the types of questions that we get. And so we've been working on a way to more directly link those individuals and inquiries to the local programs, so they can provide us with a very minimal amount of information, first name, last name, maybe an email and a zip code, and then we can link them directly to the programs in that area. So we're working on some things like that, some modernization, if you will, of our website that may also help to get the word out and really share all the services and activities that we offer. So more good stuff to come. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about today was, it was a very, very busy legislative session. Really, I want to focus on a couple of bills that came through during the regular session. There were two bills, though, that we were tracking pretty closely that I wanted to put on y'all's radar and give you the means to go and read them for yourselves as well. The first one is House Bill 1602. This is relating to the performance criteria for the award of adult education and literacy funds. So for those of you that may not know, our funding occurs through a competitive process. So this is not money that we get at the state and then we just automatically go out and push it down to the local level in some capacity. People have to apply for the funds, which is why they are considered a grant, because someone is applying to get the money. This House bill has to do with us looking at the individual entities and organizations that are receiving funds, and then developing some criteria to determine if they will continue to receive funds and at what level. So are they utilizing the funds in their grant? Are they meeting certain performance criteria in order to continue to receive that award, and at what level? The second one is Senate Bill 2139, and this has to do with the establishment of an Opportunity High School Diploma program. Now, some of you out there will probably think this is a horrible idea. Some of you will think this is a great idea, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about those because even though it's not directly impacting our work, I do think that it's important for all people in Texas to have knowledge of opportunities that can be out there. And hey, our program may not be for everyone. There may be other programs out there that are better suited for folks that are walking in our door. And we have to assess that and be like, you know, you might do better off in this other program because they have X, Y, and Z that's more closely tailored to your needs. So these two bills, if you go to www.tlo.gov, you can have access to the full bills, all the language. You can see who voted for it, the whole shebang, if you want to go and do that level of research. But I'll give you the very high level overview. So for House Bill 1602, it requires the commission, which is us, to establish some rules, which we are in the process of doing. And in those rules, we have to clearly say that we are going to prioritize the award of AEL funds to programs who can meet criteria that supports increases in high school equivalency attainment or post-secondary credential attainment. This bill is largely focused on and wants to ensure that people coming into our programs are earning credentials. So if you think about it in that context, it's very general, of course, in the bill. What we have to do at the commission is we have to figure out, how do we operationalize this? We have to figure out, what is that criteria really going to be? And so we are in the process of doing that. Really, this will probably not go into effect until July 1st. But the reason I'm bringing this up to you now is because we will be putting out some rules that says, hey, in the future, if you have AEL funds and you apply for this grant, you need to be able to meet certain criteria that really supports these increases in high school equivalency attainment and post-secondary credential attainment. So you can kind of read through the lines on that if you want, but basically we've got to do more credentials. We've got to get more folks into those programs and quickly turn them around into credentials. Now, for Senate Bill 2139, establishes through the Higher Education Coordinating Board, which is the state agency that regulates all of our community college and post-secondary education, basically all the higher education that happens in Texas. And what it essentially does is allows that agency to administer a Texas recognized high school diploma through a competency-based exam, which will be proposed by the community colleges. So this means that there will be community colleges here in Texas that will propose something to the coordinating board, and they will have to develop a competency-based exam, which the coordinating board in collaboration with the Texas Education Agency will give its stamp of approval on this competency-based exam. And that college will be able to actually issue, with the coordinating board as the authority, a high school diploma here in Texas. This is big. This is a big change. This is a big change for Texas, and it'll go out and it'll be a pilot, and I'm sure there'll be lots of studies and there'll be lots of evaluation on the effectiveness of this type of strategy and this type of option. But if you really think about both of these two bills together, which is how I've been thinking about them, is really what the legislature is saying is that we have a lot of students here in Texas that need high school equivalencies or high school diplomas for whatever reason. We've got the effects of COVID. We had students that were stopping out. They didn't return to school. We've got learning gains issues due to that. We've got all kinds of stuff happening. And what we need are pathways for individuals to be able to access education to get and earn a high school diploma or an equivalent. And we've got to make that broad, and we've got to make it very accessible to everyone. And so that's really what, at least in my mind, I think about when I think about these two bills. So I'm going to pause there and just see if we have any general questions. And I'll say this, I am not the expert on either one of these bills. We were just tracking them. I feel like they're good for you guys to kind of know that they're out there. Feel free to go read them on your own and see what's happening with them. But any questions? Okay.
Mr. Heyman says, so maybe the TSI will count for the competency-based exams?
Yeah, it could be. The college will be able to develop that. And I'm assuming that there will be rules as well established across this in terms of what that would look like, but that might be an option. One thing about the TSI, we were working with the coordinating board when they did their last procurement to update the current TSI. And the TSI, for those of you that don't know, is the college sort of entrance exam. So if you graduate from high school, maybe you have an ACT or an SAT score, and it's only good for so long. Let's say you're out though for 5 years. You got to go back to college. You got to take a TSI. That's so they know that you are academically prepared to be in a credit level class. A couple of years ago, when the coordinating board was trying to revise their current TSIA, we were working with them, and part of that process is that they are going to submit it to the NRS so that we could hopefully in the future, we could get it as an NRS approved text. So that TSIA, we're hoping, cross our fingers, that in the future, we'll be able to use that as an NRS approved test for those folks that are coming into our program. They're like, hey, I'm just trying to get into college and I need a brush up of my math because I haven't done algebra in 10 years. Help me. And we can help those folks too.
She says, I've said this many times. If they can pass the TSI, then they should be able to enter colleges. And then another question from Mary Springer. So something different than the GED to get their high school diploma.
It'll be an actual recognized high school diploma in the state of Texas. So on paper, it wouldn't be any different than someone who went through a K through 12 system and earned a high school diploma. This would be an adult earning a high school diploma here in Texas.
And then a question, how long could this take to go into effect?
I don't know. Typically, the way these things work is the first step is always going to be to establish some rules around it. So the coordinating board likely will have to establish some rules. They'll put those out, and then they'll have to start working on how they're going to implement the rule. And typically when they start working on those implementation strategies, that can take some time. This is a big shift. So I would think a couple of years, at least 2 years, to fully implement the program, because they have to come up with an application strategy. They have to kind of set the boundaries for what this competency-based exam is going to look like. At a minimum, I think the colleges are going to have some flexibility on describing what that is. But I think that the coordinating board, through the rules, has to set the boundaries. They've got to make things like it has to at least have this, the minimum standards. So those things can take a couple years. For us here at the TWC, our rules typically take about 9 months from just us putting it on paper, going through the approval processes, going through the public comment periods, and then you have to really go through the task of implementing, which is the harder part.
Right. And then one more comment was they use the GED to exempt them from TSI, so it should be able to go in reverse.
Right? Yeah, get that 165 on that GED, you're exempt from the TSI. And that may be something that comes up through these conversations that they're likely having over there with our coordinating board. That is all I have for you guys today. Again, I'd like to come back, keep you guys posted on how these things move as they start to get going and we go into more implementation type phases for some of these. My goal is always to just be very transparent, get the information out there. I like to have informed folks at the local level that's doing the work so that you guys can also see the big picture and what's happening. So thanks so much for joining.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCAL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.